chatting today and had a interesting conversation off camera, so we decided to roll on it. Gwen is going to lead this, and we're talking about culture, we're talking about traditions, and racism, and what that looks like and how it's impacting us in America. Gwen, you were sharing that's a story.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this topic this morning specifically because a friend of mine had sent in an email talking about, she was on the phone, she is white, she grew up in a community is predominantly white, and those of us who are white don't think much about white supremacy and white privilege until it's on the news for some reason. We just go about our daily lives, you know, we don't think about it. But she had been on the phone call with someone who was of color, and the person was pulled over by a police officer, and then her fear for what would happen in light of all that has gone on in the news about racism and police brutality, her fear just got really strong. Anyway, she went on to talk about that, but it brought up a lot in me, thinking about how privileged I am as a white individual growing up in Texas, and how there's so much going on right now. And some people think that this current administration actually created a lot of these racisms. I think a lot of it was brought to light and magnified, but racism has never gone away. And I think it's a big issue, whether it's Hispanic community or the African American community. We have a big issue here. And I have, one of my close friends is African American, and when we'll go to a restaurant, I can see sometimes how people respond to her and react differently to her than they would me. And it's painful for me because, like, I didn't ask to be born white, you know? But it's just interesting how, after all the multiple changes that have happened in our country, we have extreme racism with immigration going on down at the border. We have still racism in media, in all kinds of places, and it's heartbreaking to me. But I'll tell you, it took me years to get past that, because I grew up in a family, my parents would say things like, well, we're not racist, we have black friends. And you're like, okay, well, just that statement right there, that you would, you know, wrap somebody up like that. And I have a girlfriend, she's so funny, she goes, if you were born in America, you've got some African American blood in you somewhere, because of slavery. And so many people came from that lineage where, just like you said, you know, that somebody, but your grandfather was white, and your grandmother was white. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
it's
you
all
know.
mixed up in my family. And, you know, when I'm questioned about those kinds of things, somebody will make a racist remark to me, you know, and try to position me as being, oh, but you're not like them. And then I have to share with them my background. You know, I may not be as, you know, as what you think that I am, because you're looking at the color of my skin. You know what I'm saying? We can't even classify race in a lot of situations. You're looking at someone, I'm brown, so you think you know what my class is. That's just because of the color of my skin. But we are all kind of mixed up, you know what I'm saying? And I've had to challenge that many times. And so I think when people say racism, I don't think they understand the magnitude of what it is that they're talking about or trying to say anyhow. You know what I'm saying? My grandfather on my father's side was white. But I was raised in a black culture. So when I can bounce from both sides and stand firm in what I understand about what you're trying to really say, and really get to the real issue. You know what I'm saying? What you're really saying is, you want to be separated from me because of this. I had someone tell me once, she said, they said something about how they were taught that black people were less than, or you know, I had to sit there and this is someone who had a white Jesus in their home, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
have you been to Egypt? Have you been to, Israel? Have you been to any of these places?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, there's and it's hard to get into those kinds of conversations without really bringing a lot of other things up. It's really more about separation.
Yeah, there's so
Then it
much,
is about a
there's so many layers to it too, you know. I have a little manger scene that is dark skin because Middle Eastern, right? And people come in and say, why do you have a black Jesus in there? And I'm like, okay, first of all, he's not African American, but more close to African than I am.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I think, you know, we don't recognize how many times, and I've caught myself doing this, how many times we make racial slurs, not even thinking about them being racial slurs.
Mhm.
So one day my husband was in the kitchen, he did something nice for me, and I looked at him and I said, oh, that's awfully white of you. And I realized, oh my, did I just say that? But it's stuff like this that I grew up with. You know, I grew up in Texas City of all places.
Yeah.
And when I lived there,
Oh God,
it was a minority.
yeah.
It was primarily white.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've heard that it's not that way as much anymore, but it definitely was then.
The situation I was talking about, my grandmother and grandfather were from Texas City, and yeah, it was a bad situation.
When did
White man
segregation
married a
end?
black woman.
When did segregation end?
Good question. I can find out.
I
for
want
you.
to say early 60s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I did not have a black person in my class until 4th grade, which would have been 1970,
Wow.
because they had their school.
Mhm.
So it's that separateness again.
Yeah.
You know, that.
Well, I'm gonna speak for the Hispanics because we always talk about blacks, which I think we need to, but Hispanics, as far as segregation and, you know, also being, you know, brutalized, you know, by
Yeah, absolutely.
certain I remember my mom talking about when she was a young girl, my grandfather was a truck driver, and she said she remembers when they would go to restaurants, they would have to sit in the back of the restaurant.
That happened to me. I'm
Hispanics.
55 years old.
Yeah, Hispanics.
Mhm.
So Hispanics have experienced, and I remember being in high school, because I have lighter hair, lighter skin. So I was adopted at a very young age by a white man. I was raised in a white neighborhood, and I'm light skinned. So everybody always thought I was white, and I'm 100% Hispanic. And so, of course, I mean, I've got a lot of obviously European blood in me, but I'm 100% Hispanic. My birth father was Hispanic. And so, growing up, people always treated me white. And I have had people talk about Hispanic people in front of me a lot, not knowing. And as a young adult and child, I wouldn't say anything. When I started speaking up is when I got married. And I noticed that people would talk down to my husband, who could not speak English. He's from Mexico. And it would get under my skin because he was from Mexico, they treated it almost like he was stupid. And that really got under my skin. Or almost like he was a second-class citizen, or you know. And then now that I have a son that he's 15, he's kind of light-skinned, but he has darker hair. But my younger sister Dax, who used to be male, she's transgender. She told me, you need to have a talk with your son because you live in a white neighborhood who those cops are like on it. Like they stop your husband all the time, even though your husband lives in that neighborhood. So your son is Hispanic, walking around with hoodies. They're not always gonna know that he lives there. And I'm like, I could never even cross my mind.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm kind of like you, like I was kind of always just walking around like, you know,
Wow.
yeah, and I'm still, I mean, I think one time me and you went shopping, you were like, did you see how she did this?
We
And
were
I'm
out.
still,
Where were we?
and I,
Magnolia, Texas?
and I'm like, I'm still kind of like, you know,
No, I
I'm
didn't
still
see
my
that.
happy place all the time, you know, and sometimes I don't pick up on cues, you know, because I think people, you know, and maybe, you know, I'm like, why would I have a talk with my son, you know? And so, but unless it's really, they're doing something to me, but Hispanics have been definitely a part of that too.
Yeah, I think so, and it's funny, from the white standpoint, you know, there's certain parts of town you don't feel safe in. And you don't feel safe in, not because you're a woman, although that's a whole nother conversation. About not feeling safe as a woman in a
A
country
woman,
like
a white
ours.
woman, a black woman, and a Hispanic
Yeah.
woman, it
Yeah,
can
but,
vary.
You know,
all three.
just even where my father is living in a nursing facility is a primarily Hispanic community.
Uh-huh.
And the looks I get
Mm.
driving up there, just like,
Wow.
or I go buy pizza and the woman doesn't even speak English.
Mm.
Fortunately, she knows enough what a large pepperoni pizza is, you know, that I order that, we're fine, I give her $5 and we're good. So, but it's just the whole, I wouldn't say it's reverse, you
Mhm.
know, but it's awkward. And I get all kinds of cautions.
Mhm.
Well, don't go visit your dad at night, that's
Mhm.
not safe for you. Do you go there by yourself?
Mm.
Like, yeah, you know.
I get that a
I'm
lot
fine.
too.
You know, and it's like, there's still so much fear
Mm-hmm.
because of differences.
Mhm.
And I think that's the bottom
It's
line
fear.
of racism, is fear of people's differences. You're something other than me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost the assumption that I'm the right way and everyone else is wrong.
Right.
When I
And
was
it's
living in
not
rural
the truth.
Mississippi, when I would go to the doctor, I'm 55, we still sat in the back of the doctor's office. When the small town where the grocer and the hardware store and drugstore and the bank,
Wow.
yeah, all of that was still, there was stuff going on.
Well, there were still white-only
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
water fountains and
Mhm.
bathrooms when
Yeah.
I would visit my grandparents in Mississippi.
The
so,
Ku
yeah.
Klux Klan would drive down our street, our little road with crosses. They would wear their costumes in our local town. And it was so funny, because I was a little girl. I knew those voices, because we would hear them talking and handing out information as we would walk by peacefully. We would recognize, oh, that's Mr. So-and-so. But Mr. So-and-so was the nicest person to us away from that costume. So those same people that put those costumes on and went out there and had their materials out and did all of the things that they did, they were very respectful of my grandfather away from that. You know what I'm saying? I remember winning this beauty pageant in our town, Miss Black Jasper County. And the whole community came together. The grocery store, the banks, all of them helped me to win that pageant. We came together for that. My grandfather became a part of the NAACP, was part of getting Head Start starting in our neighborhood and all of these kinds of things, and they were met with a lot of opposition to get that done. But I saw my grandfather out there fighting for us to have rights as African American people. But the people that were in our town that were not people of color were kind to us and worked with us, and we had good relationships. But they would hop in those costumes, and I knew as a child. I could even tell by the shoes, because I'd see those shoes when I'd go to the local grocery store or whatever. But how far have we really come? You know what I'm saying? Because I can still experience stuff now. I have some, some stuff that I could talk about that would really, that could potentially hurt, curl your toes, that still happen.
Yeah, and like Evie mentioned, it's not just African American, it's not just Hispanic, it's also racism based on cultural differences, racism based on religion.
Yeah.
You know, for us to have freedom of religion here, we sure are particular about which religion is free.
Correct.
You know, and,
Well, and I want you to talk a little bit about that, because you started talking a little bit about reverse discrimination.
mhm.
And that is, I think that is something that's real. Because I've even, to be honest, experienced it in my family, which I was shocked. You'll hear like little comments that I'm like, because, you know, I have family that are white. I'm like, that's not right. You know, just like if someone were to say something about Hispanics, I would not like it, you know, so it is real.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, so it is very real, and it's very real as far as people's country of origin. The Indians and the Pakistanis don't get along, the Palestinians and the Israel, people from Israel don't get along. I mean, you know, and they move over here, and they still have preconceived ideas about a woman from Iran. They have preconceived ideas about Iraqi people. They have preconceived ideas about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah.
Because I have friends who were born and raised in the United States, whose parents were born and raised in the United States, and they practice Islam because that's what they came from, and that's their connection to their spirituality. And they get told, go back to your own country.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that would be here. Yeah, born and raised here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had no idea.
I know, but they just assume because this person has something on their head or they're wearing a particular outfit that we make all these preconceived ideas and then we respond out of fear.
Yeah.
Because you're different and I don't know how to relate to you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're different from me and just push it away. Yeah. And then say some really rude things. I even had a friend of mine who's from India say some terrible things about Pakistanis and Palestinians. And I'm like, we have a large community of these people here in Houston, and they are a huge financial asset to the city of Houston. A lot of them are very wealthy. They do a lot of work here, a lot of business here. They do international businesses, and they're huge in the nonprofit organizations and different things like that. And if we actually cut them out, that would be a huge loss for the city of Houston. And it's not just that group. There's so many groups, and Houston is an extremely diverse city, and that's one of the things that I greatly appreciate about it.
Sugar Land too.
Yeah, but we've got to face these underlying things that we grew up with and just slowly knock them down, slowly change, slowly work past our fears, slowly work past our preconceived ideas about things.
How do you do that? How? Because I think it is so ingrained in people from, like when we talk, almost like, you know, food, we were talking about in another episode, it's like almost you're brought up, you know, with a certain way of being and doing.
But I think it's our responsibility to look at it.
Yeah.
I think it's our responsibility to be aware. To be aware of what rises up within you when you see someone of another color, when you see someone of another race, a transgender person. We can do a whole nother episode on that. I mean, you know, it's our responsibility to pay attention. What is rising up inside of me? And then how am I going to respond to that? And what do I need to do with it? You know?
It's change.
Yeah.
And most of us don't like change. You know, we talk about this often. The only person that likes change is a wet baby. You know, the rest of us like staying in homeostasis. And I think it's important that we really take the time to recognize what we say, how we respond to these situations, and work towards making that different. And work towards loving and work towards caring about what your experience is like.
Yeah, and I think younger generations have really gotten over it because there's so much interracial marriage, interracial relationships. My children don't even know what that whole thing means, and I don't promote it. But I want to ask you this because I just, you know, am learning that even within the white community that there's separation. I never understood what the Jews. I have a friend who can literally look at someone and say, "Oh wow," and they're white. She's a Jew. How in the world do you do that? I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? What is it, the shape of the face, or how do you know? They can look at someone and say, "Oh, he's a Jew." oh,
I'm
she's
not
a
an
Jew.
expert in that.
I was at a loss. I'm like, okay, I'm looking at this person too. I can't see how much they look different from you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But they,
yeah.
oh, they're Jews. I just was
Yeah.
blown away. I can't see it.
Yeah.
You know, I think the Hispanic community does that too, because when they were like, when I started hanging around Hispanic people more, they tend to know, oh, she looks like she's Salvadorian, or she looks
Oh.
like she's this, or she looks like she's that. It's like, how do you know? You know, I mean,
Especially with so many
yeah,
mixtures going on.
yeah. How do you know? You know, aren't we all just because I'm Hispanic? I just, you know, they're like, no. I mean, Mexicans, or from Mexico look a certain way, talk a certain way, and it's like, I guess they all have their own certain culture and their own certain kind of look
Facial
and
features.
dress. Almost like Texans have their own certain look, their own certain, they talk a certain way, versus someone who, think
From the
East Coast
Northeast, yeah,
Yeah,
New Jersey.
versus someone from
accent, maybe accent.
versus someone from California.
But I'm just praying that we continue to mix, because the more we do, the less this conversation.
Right.
You know,
So,
we're not gonna-
but you can love, I can love someone from the East Coast, and I can love someone from the West Coast, and I can love someone from the Third Coast.
And people ask me all the
Right.
time, how do you get your hair to curl like that? It's been curling since I was born. Good Lord, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And we were just having a chat about this, because we, kind of recognize that there's three, if you want to call it races, represented here. But we're one. We are one. I don't know where this race thing got started. There's history about it, I'm sure. Don't get me on that one. But we can go beyond that and just connect. That has never come up in this community, and we don't want it to. Acceptance, inclusion, love. There's something that was so much bigger about us connecting than race or anything like that. And when you get past what you think about something, there's usually so much more to know and to love and to appreciate and to gain from with all of these other things. And so, golly, how can we just be happy people?
Yeah.
This is a bigger conversation. We were just chatting about it and wanted to share a little bit. So if you got some comments, follow us on the Brush Lounge on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm looking for. And you can also comment on YouTube. But we'd like to have some more conversation about this. Anything that we can do to reduce that level of fear, that anxiety about what's different about these two. They're both water utensils that you can use to drink out of. They're vessels. And so, but there's something beautiful about them both, you know what I'm saying? And what can we take from the containers and try to see what we can do to help the world,
Right.
to be better in the
Right.
world. I love
Thank
the way
goodness.
that we have connected and bonded, and how we can just up and have a conversation because we can record it, and because we can edit it, put it in the room, we can put it in the room. So start a conversation with somebody that may look a little bit different or sound a little different. I'm curious about every culture. I love culture. I've traveled to Africa and different places like that, and it thrills me to see so much beauty and so much difference, you know what I'm saying? And I love it. But then you can find, if you stay there long enough, you'll see how uniquely the same.
Yeah.
You're really.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It really is.
I meant to tell the story earlier. It just came to my memory. I took my dad to New Orleans a couple of years ago. Just happened to be the same day they were pulling down the Robert E. Lee statue out
yeah.
of Jackson Square.
Oh,
And we sat there and watched
I was
it.
there.
So my father is Edward James Lee. He is the son of a man, Robert Edward Lee, who was named after his cousin, Robert E. Lee, who was a Civil War general. So we're not a direct lineage, but a slight lineage. But it was such a weird moment to see, because we grew up like, I'm related to Robert E. Lee.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
even though we understood his history, just like this famous person, who cares what he did, but this famous person, you know, we grew up with, really proud of the Lee name. And it was just so odd and awkward
Mhm.
to see that happening. And I'm all for it. I think, you know, honor these heroes, honor these people who follow their passion, but we need to do things that help us move past this history, learn from it, but grow and move forward. So I'm all for keeping some remembrance, but also, so we're not celebrating it, but we're learning from it and moving forward. But it was just so odd
Mhm.
to be on the receiving end of that
Mhm.
instead of, I'm proud to be a Lee,
Yeah.
you know, so.
We need to do a show on, because I was it North Carolina or South Carolina where they were taking the flag down from the pole.
Mhm, mhm,
I was there when they were protesting it,
mhm.
me and a friend of mine, and we went to the side where they were actually protesting. There were two sides, and they were kind of arguing back and forth. So my friend was interviewing, because she has her own podcast, she was interviewing the side that, you know, was for taking the flag down, the Confederate flag down off the pole. And as soon as we walk away, the other side says, you two ladies need to be careful. And we were just like, we were there on a business trip, you know, we were just like, you know, oblivious as usual, you know, we're just like, you know, but we were like in support of them. We're like, y'all are doing a good thing, you know, thank you. And, you know, we were just kind of interviewing them. And so we walked down the street to a restaurant and have dinner. At the end of our dinner, they were like, we lost your credit card. The waiter lost our credit card. We're like, what do you mean we lost your credit? You lost our credit card. Can't find it. They were like messing with us big time.
Mm.
They're like, what do you mean? We just gave you our credit. I don't know what happened to it.
Mm. Wow. There's so much deep-seated belief on both sides. I mean, the NFL just went through a whole bunch of that kind of stuff as well.
It was
So much deep-seated belief on both sides.
There's so much pain. You know, we talk about the legacy of pain that is passed down from generation to generation. It's not always about color.
No,
It's not always about culture or religion. It can be passed down in various ways, but I think that's what we feel.
Mhm.
I think it's a collective legacy of pain that's been passed down in this country. It's been well over 100 years and we're still experiencing that. And it's sad,
yeah.
but it's there and we can no longer ignore it.
No.
I don't like the way it was stirred up
Mhm.
in the last 3 or 4 years, but we can no longer ignore it and we need to learn to love and embrace our differences.
And when, I think that a lot of times when they were, you know, especially the Robert E. Lee one, because I was there in New Orleans at that time, when you pull it down like that, and they were just ripping at it, and you know, oh, you know, and that's so public, you know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times when they're doing these kinds of things, if there's a place where, like the Holocaust, there's a Holocaust museum, you know, you need a plan for how that's going to move forward so that there's a transition for the people who are personal, who have some personal value associated with it. A lot of times people are not, I find, it was just a family that was in that war, or, you know, and they died or something. So I respect that, you know what I'm saying? They didn't have anything to do with the whole political piece. They were just, my dad died in that war, or we didn't have a father because he fought in this. I get that, you know what I'm saying? So I just think that a lot of times when they were pulling them, they were just so public and so just, it was a lot of breaking away. Not for the person who's saying in support of it, yes, get rid of it, but for the people who were not. I just think that there could have been, not saying a gentle way, but a different way of disposing some of those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, racism, cultural differences, religious differences, there's
Always.
so much out there, and it impacts our lives, it impacts our fear, our pain. I I mean, we could talk for hours.
Yeah, we
on
could.
this.
And we
Well,
were
I
just
was,
having
I
a
will say, I was
conversation.
scared. I mean, that did scare me.
Oh, I
Because we were
bet.
on the road by ourselves, they did scare me. I was like, and we were having a conversation before that because there were a couple of African Americans across the street from us who were like, they were just sitting there watching the protest. I'm like, I wonder why they're just sitting there and they're like not protesting. Like, how do they feel? Why aren't they protesting? Why aren't they like, why aren't they being active like us? And-
Everybody deals with things.
And
differently.
yeah, and that's what the guy said. They said, well, they're part of this community.
Mm.
So, because we asked him, it's like, why would they not want to protest too? And he said, well, they're part of this community, and they probably have their reasons why.
I don't speak
And-
publicly about politics myself, just because I don't wanna debate with anybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't wanna debate.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are very explosive about it. They're very outspoken.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna debate you about my political beliefs.
Yes.
I'm not gonna debate you about my religious, and I don't have a religion. I'm not gonna debate you about my spirituality. I'm just not willing to debate anybody. What's the,
But
you
where
know
do
what
we
I'm saying?
speak up?
I don't mind speaking
You
up,
know,
but
because
I'm
I
not
think we
looking
need
for
to-
a fight.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
I'm the
saying?
same way, but I do speak up on Facebook and
Mhm.
some of these other
That's
formats.
me. If you can handle
about-
it, then handle it. That's not my
Because I think
personality.
people need to pay attention to what they're doing and getting sucked into
Mhm.
and how media influences their thoughts and how you can
I just-
distort numbers and. you
I
know,
just
I
thought
get
it
it.
was
I'm not saying it's
sad
wrong.
that, I just thought it was sad for them. And I think everybody is different. Like, I think, some people will speak up and some people don't, and I think it's your choice. I personally thought it was sad that they had to sit there and just sit there because they had their thoughts about it.
And their consequences were too great to step up and participate. head
Yeah,
on.
and that's
And
what
a
the
lot of
case
us
was.
do that. A lot of us choose to do that because the consequences of participating in a protest
Mhm.
might come and bite you in the business.
And it did for,
You know,
it did for us.
Yeah.
I,
It did for us.
I took there's a white lady that, I, have known since 2014, so we've become very close friends. She calls me her mom. She calls me her daughter, I call her mom. And I took her to see Harriet, the movie not long ago. And before we walked in, she says, "Oh, are you gonna protect me in here?" Just like that.
Wow.
And I said, Miss Vega, I'm really hoping that we won't need anything like that. But she felt that, she experienced that, It's so funny, sometimes when I'm been hit with some kind of racial gesture, I'll say, hey, I need you to come take a ride with me. And she'll come with me and we'll just walk in, hi, how are you? Oh, I didn't know you were black. And it's, yeah, okay, well, and then they see her and they're like, oh, and you have a white mom? And we will play that. Just people who've seen me do it are gonna know now, but we've done that many, many times just because it's like, go somewhere. If I really sat down and told you my history, you wouldn't know what I was. You know what I'm saying? Golly, I just hate that it has to come to that sometimes. So I asked her, I said, are you feeling apprehensive? Are you feeling, what's going on? And she says, I don't know, I've never felt like this before. And I lived in a black neighborhood in Chicago, that's what she said, But, I don't know, maybe it's the tension and the tone of where our society is right now. You're on edge. Where we go. There was a 90-year-old woman sitting next to us who was also African American. Her family had brought her to the movie too, so we sat in the handicap section together. And they were looking at me the whole time because here I was with an older white lady, and I'm thinking, she's not really my mom, she's just my friend, or, and I'm sitting there trying to justify sitting there with her, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, it's just so much going on in our heads the whole time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have stories like that.
We do,
Yeah.
we do, and I'm sure there are people out there that have one too. We're just sharing. So if this has been something, we hope this conversation has been therapeutic. Not that we have answers, but we just endeavor to do more and be better. And when I was saying I don't publicly protest, I try to live my life in a way that people can see who I truly am. And I've never been one to be too outspoken on politics. My grandfather was, but he was willing to get in that fight. I've just never been, that's not a fight that I've ever been able to pick and try to win, you know what I'm saying? I don't do the combative, I try not to. If I'm over there, it's too late. You just pop, pick something off and I'm ready to go, but, you don't wanna get me there. But I don't do the, political piece, cause I sometimes I can see all kinds of sides to that, you know what I'm saying? So, it's kinda crazy, but we just wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about this. It should continue, have conversations about culture, have conversations about religion, have conversations about race, have conversations about what separates us, and have conversations about what brings us together.
Right, and I think that's the main piece.
Give me your hands. I love these ladies. I love us.
Our unity.
Love somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unity, oneness, love. The Brush Lounge. Thank you so much for joining us.